Saving money is pretty much a cornerstone of good personal finance. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you can save $10,000 in a way that's actually going to be practical and sustainable. According to the CNBC article, 49% of Americans have less in savings or even no savings compared to just a year ago, with 57% of them saying they could not even afford a $1,000 emergency expense, which is pretty concerning. So my goal of making these videos is to help you guys better understand and manage your finances and hopefully become financially free, because that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? But I get that the reality is it's hard to save money sometimes. First of all, we're constantly bombarded by all sorts of marketing messages constantly telling us we need to have the latest and greatest products across the entire internet. Then also there's the constant societal pressure to keep up with your friends and seeing what everyone's posting on Instagram. But what we gotta realize and admit to ourselves is that most often we're buying the things we don't need to impress people we don't even like. So if you ever catch yourself going to a fancy restaurant or purchasing something expensive, think about whether you truly desire having it or if it's just a flex and post it to your stories. And speaking of Instagram, I saw this quote the other day and it went something like, "The quickest way to be rich is to act broke, and the quickest way to be broke is to act rich." So don't get caught up in trying to look rich, because the goal is to be rich. And things completely changed for me when I realized this and made a conscious decision to change my spending habits. For example, I went from living in a 2-story penthouse apartment in the middle of the city, driving a BMW convertible and eating out all the time, to now living in a more affordable apartment and driving a beat-up old Hyundai. And interestingly, I'm a lot happier now than I was a couple years ago when I had all of those things, because I've shifted my priorities to what truly matters to me. And I feel like I've matured a little bit in a way and realized that the goal of making all the money is not necessarily the ability to buy all the expensive stuff, but it's in the freedom that it brings. Like, I'm able to live my life however I want without needing to go to a job and deal with bosses or co-workers that I don't like. I pretty much get to do whatever I want, whenever I choose, and to me, that is the most important thing in life. So downsizing and spending less on unnecessary things like that could have a huge impact on your overall finances. It might not sound exciting now, but your future self in the next 3 or 5 or 10 years will greatly thank you for it. Okay, so let's talk about why $10,000 is a good goal to have as far as trying to save money. Now, of course, any amount you save is better than none at all, but in this case specifically, we're gonna go with 10K and not say like just $1,000, because in my opinion, something like $1,000 is far too little, and we want to save an amount that would be able to move us ahead financially towards financial independence. And then on the other hand, if we're setting out to save $50,000 or $100,000, that's just not very realistic and seems a little bit too far-fetched. Unless, of course, you're already making a 6 or 7-figure income, in which case saving 100 grand isn't going to be too difficult anyway. So of course, any amount is better than nothing at all, but in my opinion, shooting for 10K could be the sweet spot for most of us who are just starting to save, because it's no chump change and it would be a significant enough amount for you to feel less anxious about your finances and maybe even motivate you to save even more. When we break down $10,000 into monthly savings, it comes down to just $833 a month, or if broken down into the number of days in a year, it will come up to just $27 and some change. Now that makes it feel a lot less daunting and definitely feel more achievable. So the first step to making this work is to do an audit of your total expenses. And I recommend doing this using the Wallet app. I've tried many different budget tracking apps, but this one is definitely my favorite because it has a really clean, simple to use user interface, and logging your transactions is really quick and easy. You can even connect your bank accounts to it, so it'll automatically sync and log all of the transactions you make, which is definitely a game changer. Even after just a month of doing this, you'll get a clearer picture of where exactly your money is going. Now, it's important to track where every single dollar is going, because that will greatly help you to reduce or eliminate things that are possibly wasting you money. So then what I would do is to put the amounts that you've logged onto a spreadsheet, and starting with the fixed expenses that you have each month, things like rent or mortgage, bills, car payments, food, basically all of your necessities. Of course, this number is going to be different for everyone, but according to Forbes, the average salary in the US is about $60,000 a year, or $5,000 a month. So for this example, let's assume a salary of $5,000 a month. And what we're gonna do is subtract the amount needed for the necessities and then subtract another $833 from it. So let's say your total necessities comes up to $2,500, which means 5,000 minus 2,500, that leaves us with another 2,500. And then from there, we're gonna take out $833 for our savings. And this would leave you with a little under $1,700, and this is the money that you can choose to enjoy or spend it on whatever other remaining expenses that you have. This is different from the approach that most people have, where they would earn, spend, and then try to save with whatever little that they have left over. Now, the key thing you need to do in order for this to work is to put your savings into a separate bank account. Preferably a high yield savings account and one that you don't have easy access to. It's not a good idea to purely rely on your willpower to not be tempted to use the money, especially if you're seeing it sitting around in your bank account that you have easy access to. In fact, what's even better is to set up a recurring investment in an ETF, such as the VOO, which is basically the S&P 500 index. You can do this with a brokerage like Webull and set it up such that it'll automatically transfer the amount you set from your bank account into your Webull account and automatically buy the ETF every month. So this way you could dollar cost average your way into a long-term investment and get to benefit from the market's growth over time. Now in theory, this sounds really simple, but the reality is, even after tracking your budget, setting aside $833 might not be that easy. But luckily, there are some things you can do to make things a little bit easier. The first thing is to go back to the wallet app or where you chose to track all of your expenses and look for items that you could cut back on or eliminate. Things like subscriptions or any sort of recurring expenses that you might not actually need. For me, I find that one of the easiest ways to save money is to simply eat out less and start prepping more of your meals at home. Because all the little trips to those casual restaurants are literally eating away at your savings. And you might have noticed that nowadays, it seems that the portion sizes at restaurants are getting smaller and smaller, and this is because of something referred to as shrinkflation. So it's just not worth to be spending so much of your money when you're not going to be getting as much value as you should be. Of course, you should treat yourself to a nice meal every now and then, but in general, it would make a lot more sense to prep most of your meals at home. What I would typically do is once a week, I'd cook up a bunch of my meals to last me for a week or so and then put them all in the little meal prep containers and keep them in the freezer. So whenever I need to eat, I just take one out and pop it into the microwave. And just by doing this, I've managed to save over 70% of my food budget. Plus, the meals that I make on my own are a lot healthier and it tastes just as good as what I would get if I were to eat out. I usually look at meal prep recipe videos on YouTube and just follow their steps. Doing this would also mean you would need to rely less on food delivery apps like DoorDash and Postmates, which is really one of the biggest wastes of money in my opinion. Because not only are you paying the additional delivery charges, but restaurants would typically mark up the prices of their food on these apps to cover the charges that they have to pay to these apps. So if you're really craving for some takeout, it's way better to just head down to the restaurant and pick it up yourself. Along with this, you can make other switches like making your coffee at home instead of getting one at the coffee shop, because coffee has one of the biggest markups in the entire food and beverage industry, with a markup of about 80% for every drink. So you're essentially paying way more than what it would cost you to make your coffee at home. The key thing with being successful at saving money is you gotta make saving become a habit. And it comes down to changing all of these little daily habits that you might have. Since the past 3 to 5 years, I've switched from buying name brand grocery products to the house brand stuff, and I've never really noticed a huge difference in terms of the quality of the products, but the small savings really does add up over time. So let's see how much we'll be able to save by cutting back on these things. Instead of eating out, which could easily cost you about $12 to $15 for a meal, you'll be spending just an average of about $3 to $4 for a homemade meal if you were to prep your meals. And that's a saving of about $10 a day. Then instead of buying coffee at a coffee shop and spending $5 to $7 on it, you can make it at home for cheap and spend just under $1, which is a savings of about $5. Now that's a total of about $15 saved per day, which equates to about $450 per month. And this leaves us with just another $383 out of the $833 target that we have to save each month in order to be able to hit the 10K goal in a year. All right, so we've talked about saving money and changing your lifestyle habits to support this goal. Now, there's one other element that we need to pay attention to, and that is to increase our income. Because let's face it, saving alone sometimes just isn't enough. We have to find ways to increase our income. In fact, the reality is, it's easier to make an additional $500 a month than it is to try and cut back on expenses even further to try and save the same $500 a month. The good news is there are many ways to do this. First of all, if you're employed, the best thing you could do is to simply ask for a raise. Too many people don't do this because they feel awkward bringing it up, but this is perfectly normal. Instead of waiting around for your employer to offer you a raise, as long as you've been doing good work for a year since your last salary was set, it could be time to ask for a raise. Or alternatively, it could be time to switch jobs and come in with a higher expected salary. But for me, what I think is an even better option would be to start a side hustle. And there are many side hustles you can start without needing too much of your time, such as tutoring online or becoming a Discord server moderator, or even pet sitting if you like animals. I've got a whole video about different side hustle ideas on my channel that you can check out. It's really not that difficult to start a part-time side hustle that could earn you anywhere between an extra $300 to $400 a month. It's amazing what you can achieve in a year if you're willing to make some some sacrifices in the short term and delay any instant gratification. Because just by simply setting aside $833 a month or $27 a day, you would have $10,000 saved up in a year. And this is where the fun begins, because now you have a more solid foundation and you can actually start to invest and grow your money to further build your wealth. Now, once you're able to save the $10,000, be sure to watch this video right here to see how to invest your first $10,000 to maximize your returns. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please drop a like down below and subscribe if you haven't already. For now, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.